I'm Evelyn Lee.
And I'm Janine Chastain. We're collaborating on curated conversations to explore how the industry of architecture is changing.
Together, we'll find ways to create new solutions to current challenges while elevating the value of architects.
Welcome to Practice Disrupted.
Hello, listeners. Hello, Janine.
Hi, Evelyn. Hi, Disruptors.
This week, we are covering a lot of things in one episode with my good friend, Tenille Bettenhausen, who I knew previously as Tenille Jones.
Yeah, I actually, in prepping for this episode, I didn't realize how long the two of you had actually known each other, but you guys go way back. And we finally got to meet up in person at A22 and had dinner together next to the iconic Chicago River.
Tenille and we literally just had a prep call for this last week, and she's like, we've known each other for 2 decades, which is pretty crazy. And we were introduced by Jeff Gill, who is the current executive director for AIA Orange County. And this just does go to show you that the AIA is responsible for yet another great friendship of mine. I don't know what our today's selves would have told our yesterday's selves about where we are today, and perhaps we'll find out on the show. But I was interested in bringing on Tenille because her career journey has had just as many career pivots, arguably more than mine. And we can cover a lot of different things in this topic because there's people out there that I feel are still actually looking to define their own career journey right now. So we're going to cover everything from managing your career, more specifically how it might not be a direct path, but also ask Tenille what made her decide to pivot along the way.
We're also going to dip into a little bit about podcasting and technology and definitely some architecture in there along the way. So I am looking forward to this. And maybe we should jump to Tenille to kick it off. Tenille, we always ask our guests to introduce themselves briefly. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're working on right now.
Well, hi, ladies. I'm so excited to be doing this with you guys. And Evelyn's right. We go back decades. There have been many kids, many moves between the time that we met and today. And so it's really neat to be on your podcast. So I'm super excited. Well, like I said, my name is Tenille. I have a background in architecture. I have a degree in architecture from Arizona State University. I graduated in 2000, and I have been in this industry for a really long time, and it's kind of surprising, actually. I currently work for an awesome company called Microdesk, and we're a platinum partner with Autodesk, and we provide software solutions, project consulting, and software training for Revit, AutoCAD, Bluebeam, etc. to our clients. I'm the current client success manager in the West and Central US, and I work on building relationships with our clients, really bridging the gap between what happens after the purchase, after the training, and really building those relationships and making sure that everything is going smoothly and helping them throughout their digital transformation process. So while not traditionally practicing architecture, I still have a hand in changing the built environment, but on the digital side of business.
I'm curious, just if I can piggyback on that question, like what's the typical size a firm would be before they would hire or work with someone like you to come in and help them with their digital assets?
We have clients that are really big, large firms with multiple offices across the US. And I actually have a client that has offices outside of the US, in the UK. They had just opened an office in Mexico. They're in India. So the size is not really the bigger issue. I think that, any architecture firm or general contractor or engineer needs the software to complete business. And so we provide that software as a reseller, but we also add on how can we bring best value to that software. The software is not doing you any good if you're not using it to its fullest potential. And I'm sure that all three of us know that, you can use AutoCAD as 2D, or you can use Revit as 2D and not as 3D, and you're not getting the full value out of it. And so we come to firms and ask them, how can we help you do this faster and better?
It's interesting that you ended up in technology because I know you spent time early in your career actually working in a traditional firm setting, doing architecture, doing the drafting, and now you're on this other side of your career where you're kind of at the high level helping with the digital technology systems inside a firm. So I think we want to get really in the weeds on your career path and wondering if you can give us a high level view of all the roles that you've kind of had over the year. When Evelyn's talking about all this pivoting, what does that look like?
I always jokingly say if it could be done to a project, then I've probably done it over this last 20 years. So I've probably could single-handedly entitle a project, draw it, contract it, do the CA on it, and even be there for the ribbon cutting because I've worn all the hats along the way. And so when it comes to design and construction processes, I've pretty much seen it. So as you know, that I have a degree in architecture. So I started very traditionally in a firm, very traditionally doing drafting, working for Jeff Gill, who we talked about earlier, who Evelyn talked about earlier. And, over the years, I realized that I wasn't completely fulfilled in those roles and I didn't know why. I would always ask to get out of the office if they were like, does anybody want to go to the site? Does anybody
Like
want to go?
me.
Me, pick me. I volunteer as tribute. I am getting out of this office and I wanted to see what we're putting on paper, like in real life, because I think the squiggly line and like, what does that really look like on the job site? And so I wasn't getting a chance to see that. I kind of equate it to being a musician, right? Like musicians can play music and you can give them the sheet and they can play all the notes. But wouldn't it be easier if they heard it first? Like the tempo, all of the melody, all of that. And so for me, I was like, I'm not building my toolkit, my architectural toolkit, if I don't even know what this stuff looks like beyond sitting in front of this computer and drafting it for 8 hours a day. And so the firm that I was working for just really didn't do the construction administration part. That wasn't not what Jeff and his team did. And so I went to work for an owner to see the construction side and the owner side. So I worked in healthcare at Hoag Hospital, a local hospital here in Orange County. And I really felt like I was making a difference. The tower project that I worked on was where I had my babies. So it really felt like I was giving back to the community in that way, something very tangible. And not to say that building Starbucks isn't giving back to the community, because we all need our coffee and we all need, that pick me up in the morning. But I just really felt like I said, like that, those projects that really made you feel good and walk away and like, wow, I really did a great job there. And I really felt good about it. But then I had kids. And so I think we'll probably talk about that later. And that really changed my trajectory right there. That was the first one of the first or second pivots that I made. And, because it was very challenging for me to spin all the plates. So I took an extended maternity leave. And fast forward like 5 years after that, maternity leave was over and I was ready to come back. I didn't really know what my place in AEC was anymore. And I think we don't talk about this enough, but, the challenge of coming out of maternity leave back into a role is very, very difficult. I had no idea because I had worked already for 11 years. I only took 5 years off, but to firms, I was considered rusty. So I was really, really shocked. I'm like, what about those 10 years that I worked beforehand? And that didn't matter at all. And yeah, I just don't think that we talk about that enough in this industry. Like, what does that look like? And so I had an opportunity to work for a GC, and that was not for me. So that world is super stressful. But I considered it another tool in my toolkit, and another tool in my toolkit. And also as a Black woman, the GC world is really tough. Like, I was called sexual chocolate in a meeting. And so, yeah, I wish podcasting was a visual medium, because the looks on your faces right now are like just mind blown. Like,
Yeah,
your listeners have no
I don't
idea.
even know what to say. That's so
Yeah.
inappropriate. I can't even stand it.
Oh, it was terrible. And I didn't know what to say. I just, it's like full stop in the meeting. Like, what? Like, it was like a casual, you know, you know, hey, so, like it was my name. It's such a crazy environment. I actually did ask our project manager to not put me on projects with that individual. And I was told, welcome to construction, you know.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's just crazy. It was crazy, and that's not to say that all GCs are like that. I mean, I'm pretty sure there are fantastic ones around, but it was just it really wasn't for me. So I called Jeff, my ID, who at the time was obviously at this point a past boss of mine and a IDP mentor. And I just had a come to Jesus moment with him. Like, what do I do? You know, I think everybody should have a mentor in their lives. Like, you know, and I could say that he's more than that to me now, like a mentor, old boss, a friend. He's definitely more like family to me now, very similar to how, you know, Evelyn and I are. And they were at my wedding, you know, so it's more than just a mentorship relationship. But, you know, I know that I could call him up and say random things like, you know, I want to start an ice cream truck business. And, you know, and he would be like, that's great. You're going to do awesome. Let's see who we can call. We can call so-and-so because they make really good ice cream. So to have somebody in your corner really cheerleading for you, imperative in this industry for sure. So I asked him, like, what should I do? You know, I told him what was happening. I didn't know where to go. And he was like, have you ever done business development? And I said no, because obviously I had worked for him as a, you know, designer and drafter. But, you know, he's like, I think you would be really great at it. You're terrific at building relationships and you know how to pull together a great project because you've been on high performing project teams. You can talk the talk and then also translate it to people that need it in layman's terms, right? And so he got me my first job in business development in an architecture firm. And it was perfect for me. I jokingly told Evelyn the other day that I used to get in trouble in the firm for talking too much because when I was complete with my projects and it was submitted and ready for permitting, I was good. I was done. Like I wanted to like talk to people and I was in the kitchen and doing all the water cooler stuff and just like you could be doing more work and why would I want to do that? I've already completed all of my tasks. So so there knowing that I love the people side and you know the people side of AEC is where I definitely feel more comfortable even today and just really loving on people who love good architecture and that's still being in the industry, which is really neat.
It is so weird to me that like the people side, because I struggled with the same thing, Tenille, like wanting that connection to people. And yet like in the drafter role, you're so far removed from that. It's so shocking to me until I had that role. I didn't understand that that was going to be a kind of insular position. I guess at some point in your career, you get closer to the client and the people, but not when you're starting out, not really. So yeah, same struggle.
Yeah, I mean, and there's something to be said about the people that, I mean, I had a coworker that he was a machine and he would get in front of the computer and black out the lights in the office and have his headphones in and he designed like amazing stuff. And I was always like, oh, he would like say 2 words a day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm on my like 10th cup of coffee. I'm talking to everybody. And he's like, hi, you know, and there's some people that are very like that, but having the relationship is really, really important, at least for me. And I know that we probably this is a whole different, podcast, conversation about how those relationships are happening today remotely. But definitely when I was in the firm, I needed that connection. I needed to talk to people.
I think it's really great that you found that. I mean, part of that of what you were looking for in a relationship with Jeff, who became your mentor and close friend. Yeah, Evelyn and I have both known Jeff for a very long time. He's such a sweetheart, and I can just see like him sitting down and just talking to you, and knowing that like you have the interest in the profession and seeing you get stuck, not because of anything that you did wrong, but because the systems in place were not supporting you to move forward, and trying to work with you to solve that. I mean, that having a mentor or somebody who's advocating for you is so critical.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And our relationship of how we met through the previous executive director. And, I called Cheryl and I asked her, like, I need help. Like, I need a mentor. This is at the very beginning. It was like in 2000. And she was like, okay, hold on 1 second. I think I know somebody. I'll call you back. And I was like, this lady is never going to call me. She ain't going to call me back. Like, whatever. And she calls me back within like an hour and she's like, I have the perfect guy. Here's his phone number. And I was like, oh, you're not gonna like set it up for me? Like, he's not gonna call me? And she's like, no, here's his phone number. Call him and see if you guys like connect. And it was from that conversation that, he brought me into the office and we talked about, what we both wanted to get out of this relationship, out of the mentorship. And, at the time I wasn't working for him and he found a spot for me at the firm that he was the principal for. And it grew from there, but so organically, like random, fortuitous meeting of each other through the AIA.
Similarly, I felt like in not really having the right mentors in my, like inside of the firms that I was working with, I think a big reason that I got so involved with the AIA was because I could find those mentors outside of my firm that I could relate to. And it was kind of on neutral ground in a way. And so I could always go there as a source of, talking to someone about like a specific challenge I was facing or trying to get career guidance. And so it became a really important place for me to get that kind of mentorship outside of, like my 9 to 5 job. But I want to jump back into, you were kind of leading us through the series and the progression of where your career had gone. And obviously, so you found your place in business development. Tell us a little bit more about that and how you got all the way into a sales role.
Well, I'm still not in a sales role. I still am very traditionally business development and honing those relationships and making sure that there's a point of contact there for people. I think, networking obviously is huge. It's fundamental to business, right? And so I found myself in business development, one, because I really love talking to people about this work. I wanted to stay architecture adjacent. I didn't necessarily want to design it anymore, but I wanted to stay a very relevant part of the conversation. And so my first role in business development was really trying to drum up work for a local architecture firm. And there's no better way to be a part of that conversation than to talk about your team, our team of people that are going to do an amazing project for you. And I really found like, this is it. I'm really excelling in, in connecting with people. Some people hate conferences. Like I had a coworker that we would go to a conference and he would be in the corner, like by himself, like rocking in the corner. Like, I don't want to be here. I really hate this. We're in the completely wrong industry. But I love it. I love everything, all the energy about being on the conference floor and going to events and activities and the networking stuff afterwards. That's where I'm on. And so, but I'm still in my element, right? So I still can talk about the built environment. And so it was a really good marriage of the two things like that I had a strength in and an education in. So that's how I found myself here. And I still do business development. So right now, we have large clients that will do a service with us or purchase software through us. And the renewal with Autodesk is every 3 years. It's on a 3-year cycle. And so I'm really in that 3-year cycle to make sure, how are things going? Can we do better? How do we do it better? Do we need training? How is your office utilizing it? And so really still talking to people in the industry about how to provide best practices for doing their projects.
The interesting thing about customer success, though, is that you're also feeding the conversations that you hear back to the product, right? Or to others or to the sales cycles. So you're constantly kind of improving even procedures within Microdesk and how they support other clients while you're supporting clients too. So it's a more holistic view, I feel like, of business development than architecture firms, because for me, when you look at business development in architecture firms, it's really more salesy. To Janine's kind of early comment, it's like make the point of contact, hand the project off, and then they run with it. And rarely ever does that business development person come back kind of after the fact and says like, what was your experience? How can we do things better? So I feel like it's an evolution that technology firms have adopted, but architecture firms haven't necessarily created like fully fleshed out those same processes.
No, I agree. I'm really the middle person. And, because when you're in sales, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? And so I think a lot of times the client, if the salesperson goes to the client and they say, "Oh, how is it going?" They'll say, "Oh, it's fine," or if they do have a problem. And I think that's very traditional, even in the architectural firm where the project manager or maybe the architect asks the client how things are going, but they don't want to say that things are going poorly or they're unhappy or whatever. So I'm a neutral third party, right? So I come in and I'm like, you can tell me anything that's happening and I'll try to fix it. And so I might not be able to fix it. I don't really know all the technology, but I'll go find somebody to fix it. So I'm really kind of like the client fixer, right? So, and you're right, Evelyn, there's, the business development person in a firm will initially make that contact, ask how we're going to do business together, and then walk away. And so you're losing a lot of opportunity to build really good relationship, because the one thing we know is that you make more money on repeat clients, and you can't get repeat clients if you just say thanks so much and walk away from it. And so Microdesk really has embraced that, and created my position only 10 months ago. So we're still new at it, and we're still learning how to navigate, how to do the dance between, sales and my role. But I love nothing more than a client to call. I feel like I'm successful as a BD person or a client success manager when the client is calling me and I'm not calling them. And when I get emails where they're reaching out to me because I've done my job, what I'm supposed to do, and that role that I have within the company, and I can help you be better and use the product better.
Yeah, you see, Evelyn, where my train of thought kind of went back to old familiar territory. I guess so. Just to clarify, sales in a technology firm is a separate role, or they might have a separate division perhaps that manages the actual closing of the deal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in our specific organization, there are sales. That's what they do. They're gonna come anytime I'm having a conversation with a client about how much something costs or when we can deliver it. Then that's not that I bring them right on back to sales. I don't know anything about cost or any of that, but I can speak to how to do something better and strategies on doing it better. And so we kind of walk the client through a funnel, right? They're new, they've purchased the product or the service, then that's when I'm introduced and I'm with them that whole time. And if I hear something like, our firm really wants to start learning about automation. Oh, okay, great. That's the key for me to go to our salesperson and say they want to know about Dynamo or Orchestra. Maybe we should talk to them about that. Then it goes back through the funnel, pre-sales, then me, then post-sales. I'm not selling anything. Because I think my personality is like, if you don't want it, I'm totally cool with that. It's total, I'm not the hard salesperson, the used car salesman type, but you need this. And if you said no, I'd be like, cool, Evelyn. Well, call me if you need me. So I don't have a sales bone in my body.
I kind of want to know, what have you learned in being in this role where you get to sit with firms and understand their interest and pain points around technology and the different programs that they're using? Any high level observations there?
Well, I think overarching, everybody is struggling with finding good people to complete projects. And I think as an industry, in the industry as a whole, all of the biggest pain point that most of my clients have is that they can't find somebody to help them. And so we provide consulting services to get them through a rough spot. And we started doing that about 20 or so years ago, where our clients that were buying software from us through us as a reseller, in the original and one of the previous recessions, had laid off a lot of their people. And as work came back on board, firms were having a hard time finding people. And so our leadership team was like, well, actually, the people that work for us all have degrees in architecture, engineering, they all have backgrounds in real world application. We can help you for the short term and to get you through this hard part of of project timing. And so they saw that we could do that holistically on a larger scale, and so now we do consulting. So I think that that's a huge pain point that I'm seeing right now. I think what's most interesting to me is my architecture program, I did everything by hand. Like I hand drafted almost my entire portfolio was hand drafting. And so getting out of school and going to a firm where, I entered right at the point where people were like, we don't want to use AutoCAD. We don't want that. We're going to just, design on the back of a napkin. I'm pretty sure that Jeff has given me a floor plan on the back of a napkin. And we don't want to mess with that newfangled stuff. This is, we're going to stick with hand drawing. So we drag them across that finish line, and obviously have been in the industry going from AutoCAD to Revit. And there are still several firms that have not adopted Revit. So I think that's another pain point where they want to, it's like almost equated to playing double dutch, like jump roping, and you don't know when, nothing stopped, the projects don't stop. So how do you jump into that, start jumping in there, like without getting hit by all the ropes and, getting bruised up. And so clients are really having a hard time trying to figure that out too. But I'm seeing this transition in technology throughout my career, and I'm excited to see it's not going to stop, obviously, right? We're moving more into automation and, sustainability, and how all of that wraps around like in technology is so interesting to me. So it's a really neat place to be where all of these great things are flying around, and also it's just a great company. Like, for me personally, I've almost never worked anywhere where I've said I have a really great idea, and it's like, well, you got to talk to your boss, you need to talk to their boss, to talk to this person, and maybe the owner of the company will want to do that, but probably not anymore. And maybe not right away, maybe next, fiscal year. And I've heard in meetings people say, well, are we going to go into the metaverse? And our bosses are like, yeah, check it out. Tell us all about it. Like, go and make it happen. And I'm always floored, like, there are processes, obviously. I'm not just out here spending money like left and right. Like, let me do whatever I want to do. But on the technology side, I've never had an opportunity like this. It's really like whatever you want to do. If you could bring value to the company, they'll listen.
So I want to circle back. So you talked a little bit about the things that made you create the decision to make a change. So one, like working for the GC obviously wasn't a good fit. You made decisions around kind of priorities after having your kids in order to make it work for you. How, like, other than the obvious, were those decisions easy, or were those decisions kind of hard for you? And then how do you have any advice on like people pivoting, or like when they're thinking about what's next, how to take those steps? Because I feel like that's where actually a lot of people get stuck. Like, I feel like there's a tremendous amount of individuals at firms that are comfortable with being uncomfortable, and they aren't willing to really take that next step because it's something new.
Yeah. I like, yeah, the being, being okay in the discomfort. I wasn't okay with that. It's just not my personality to be okay with that. I think, I don't know, I think the biggest challenge that I faced, in deciding on what to do next or what next step to take, was really not knowing what I wanted to do or what I was good at. I mentioned earlier, like, I have a degree in architecture. I've been drafting for like 10 years. Like, what am I good at? And I think that's what stops. That's like a full stop right there is, well, what does that mean? Like, if I were to stop today working in a firm, what can I do that's different? And that's why I love this type of conversation, because maybe you don't want to go into software. Maybe you don't want to go into real estate or, software technology or real estate or whatever. But I think when people start thinking beyond the traditional practice, there are things that you can do. But I didn't really know what I could do without Jeff really being that mirror to shine back my strengths. There's no way that I would have known, and he was like, well, I mean, I'm sure we would have continued. We would have figured out something, but definitely somebody to speak that insight into you, because I think it's so easy for us to just not see the good in what you do. Like, I think I'm a really good designer. That's it. But I clearly I talked a lot and got in trouble a lot, and they saw that she likes to talk a lot. So there was a negative when he was trying to get projects done on time and on budget. But in this role, it's a positive, and so I think we just have to continually have this conversation of, if you're uncomfortable, do something about it. There's a lot of options out there.
The interesting thing is there are a lot of options, and I always struggle when architects kind of talk about the other options, but they're very adjacent. And there's nothing wrong with those adjacencies. Like, right, you went to the owner side, you went to the general contract side. Some people go to the manufacturer side. I think you in a way kind of did that. We totally skipped over that part of it. Not direct manufacturer, but
building materials.
you had another role in building materials, right? There's people that do actually go to kind of more the sales side of when it comes to product selection. But we're told in school, like, you can do so much with an architectural education, yet we're so limited when it comes to thinking about what we can actually do. Yet, as you said, we have a shortage in the talent pool. So there's plenty of people out there that have figured out where to go. I would argue that we don't necessarily have it shortage in the talent pool, but we've lost people to a lot of great places, and we haven't necessarily been able to hold on to those people or keep in touch with them because they feel like after they leave architecture, they have no place here.
I agree with that. Yeah, that's there is that sentiment, and I think one of the biggest things that held me back from making that initial leap is that I didn't want to disappoint anybody. Like, my mom, single mom, paid for me to go to college, get that college degree in architecture. And I'm like, Mom, just kidding. I'm going to do something else. And so I think that was always the, like, I'm going to disappoint somebody. I'm not going to be the doctor, lawyer, architect. Like, what am I going to, what am I doing? But I think the worst of all of that is disappointing yourself. And I think at the end of the day, if you just slug it out, but you're sad about it and you're not happy with your career, then you need to make the change and be uncomfortable with what's making you uncomfortable and do something about it, and not doing what you love.
Wow.
So,
man, this conversation's hitting really close to home for me. I mean, there's so many things I want to talk about in this. I mean, first off, for folks like us, there's not a lot of good career guidance. I think that there's inherently this thing that goes on in practice where they staff around what they need people to do, and then not necessarily what identifying people's strengths are and matching them to skills that would fit that better. I think that's a challenge, and it really, in my mind, is a lost opportunity on cultivating staff around a variety of needs in the firm, whether they're the ones that you need support on, or there's a larger way to look at the functionality of your firm and the way you staff people. But also just talking about how difficult this decision was for you. Oh man, I was there and it was hard. It was so hard. There was so much worry about regretting it and worrying about an incomplete journey that I had invested so much time into this, and then fearing that I was going to regret it if I stepped away. But then also like not being honest with myself about how unhappy I was in certain situations, and trying to muscle through it. But it sounds like in your story, it sounds like you found a way to give yourself permission and to acknowledge that this was the best step for you.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, can you speak further to like kind of reconciling all of those contradictory feelings?
Yeah, I think I had to really, like I said, shed that fear of disappointing my mom, that I wasn't going to be licensed. I wasn't going to be that, like I said, the tagline, doctors, lawyers, architects. We need to figure out where that even came from, because the idiom is that they're, these all are three amazingly accomplished careers. And if your kid is one of those, then it's like, great. And I really had to shed that, but recognize that now I have kids that are looking at me every day going to work sad about what I'm doing. And I don't want those brown eyes to be looking at me and that this is what I have to do when I get a job. I'm just going to hate what I do, because that's what my mom is doing. She hates it and she's sad about it and she's crying about it on the way home on the 405 and like all of these emotions. And I think I had to go stop and say, there's there are two young Black women that are watching me right now. And so I have to, my duty and my sole job is to provide them outlook to their future. And so now I need to find what it is that will make me happy. Would I have, I don't know, maybe going somewhere else wouldn't have made me happy, but the option needs to always be there, because we're not held, you're not seatbelted into a career. You can continue to grow. And, it's kind of funny, like my in-laws, my husband's side of the family, every time we have like a Christmas or Easter dinner or something, I'm like, oh, I started a new job. And they're like, what? Like, weren't you just at this other job? Like, what are you talking about? You got a new job? Why? But isn't that the spice of life? Like, you move on, you learn new things. You learn new things about yourself. And when we're old and gray and all sitting outside, rocking in the rocking chair, I had 20 jobs. You had 2 jobs. So what was the difference? We're all, I was happy because I got to know more about the world and about the profession and about life. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I got my girls to see you chase it. Just keep chasing it until you find it. There's nothing wrong with that. However, if they spend my money on college, no, I'm just kidding.
And they don't follow their degree
If they're listening
plan.
to this, you need to follow. No, I'm just kidding. I'm making a joke. I would fully support them in finding the fire.
And you haven't stopped pivoting because there's still 2 more things that we need to talk about. And one of them does relate to your role of being a mother, and the other is our shared mutual love of podcasting. So let's start with your role as a mother, and basically you're writing a kid's book is what I hear. So tell us more about that.
I am. I'm writing a kid's book. I feel like, when you have little kids, you buy them all these books, right? And you get down with them and you read like, Brown Bear. And I know Evelyn's like, I'm sure you've read that about 1 million times. And I thought, I'm looking at these books. There's not a lot of representation of Black kids. I think currently there's a push to have that, recognized. And there are books that are on the shelves today, which we're doing a fantastic job. But I feel like representation is a huge part of why I decided to write the book. But not only that, representation in STEM and STEAM careers, because we don't see that too often. And so I'm writing a book about dreaming and deciding, which very much so is like this whole entire conversation, dreaming and deciding on careers, And so it's about a young girl who looks like my daughters, so they're half black and curly pigtails and all that. And this girl is really exploring what she wants to be when she grows up and thinking about how she can be such a good doctor or veterinarian or computer programmer, but is always drawn back to her love and desire to do design and construction. And I do feel like that's maybe a little bit of like my story. I didn't leave completely. So something always draws me back into this world. And so it's called Maybe I'll Be an Architect, and it comes out on October 25th. And also actually I have an opportunity for your listeners. If you want a sneak peek of the book, you can go to my website, Tenille B Writes, because I'm building a launch team. And so I just need people to join me, read the book, give an honest review on Amazon, 4 or 5 stars only, but honest anyway. And the week it goes live. And, if you're interested, even if you don't have kids, but you love the idea of supporting the dream of seeing more diversity in STEM and STEAM careers, definitely join my launch team and tell people about it. The more the merrier. I'm sure it'll be in your show notes. But I'm excited about it because I want my kids to see themselves in career exploration, whatever that may be.
That topic really hits home to me. Because I have these 2 kids with very different personalities, and I'm like trying so hard not to imprint like what I think they're going to end up being based on their personalities, even though I could very much say my son is going to be that, like, kind of that, if you go to the cliches, when I was back in high school, he'll probably be that dork that's like the scientist or the physicist, or I was in chess club, so I can't make fun of him being like in something like that. Much more forward tech, and versus my daughter is much more, hopefully not the cheer captain, but the soccer team captain and the homecoming queen and the prom queen. But at one point, somebody told me, we need to stop telling kids, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because then it becomes this, because it begins to build upon that, like, pressure of, like, I need to be a specific thing, and what I decide now is what the only thing that I can become. So I kind of like this idea that we're in constant career exploration, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that.
Yeah, I do that same thing too. I do have 2 kids, totally different personalities. And I'm like, and I hear all the time from one of them, I want to be an architect. I'm like, really?
You're like, oh, really?
Abort mission.
Oh no, stop.
Just kidding. So, but yeah, I just think that, it's like we talked a lot today, even in our earlier conversation. I don't have that project related activity anymore. Like, I don't see things come to fruition. I don't start something and I don't see it like through. Everything is always, a client doesn't end us, and my relationship with them doesn't end. And so these projects are very much scratching that itch of creative projects for me, and exploring, like, design and, bringing for the podcast, bringing spoken word back, and making it relevant and continuing it on and telling stories. That's such a big part of my upbringing, storytelling and passing on that information from generation to generation. And that's what podcasting does. And it's neat. maybe not necessarily my podcast topic is not the most heartwarming, but nonetheless.
Yeah. When your podcast got announced, I was like, wow, okay, now that's a niche within a niche within a niche. I mean, so
That's right.
it's
That's right.
a true crime podcast about murders that happen near architecture.
Mhm.
And honestly, I've been listening to it and it makes me so happy. I love your show so much. I've listened to several episodes that come to mind, but definitely the Frank Lloyd Wright episode is a big one.
Yeah.
And then I can't remember his name, but there was the oh my gosh, the one that they made into a movie that was about the
Oh,
two
Stanford White.
gentlemen.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, really intense stuff on your show.
Yeah.
How on earth, I have a lot of questions, but how on earth are you gathering all this content and finding it?
Well, the profession is more deadly than you think, right? So surprisingly, I'm not short on stories. You know, this was very much so a pandemic project. I'm a business developer. I need to get in front of my clients. I need to come up with ways to engage, right? And so when the pandemic started, conferences were canceled, AIA canceled, all the things that I would have gone to see my clientele gone. They weren't even in their offices, and half of them aren't even really back in their offices. And so I was like, how do I get in front of these people besides going on LinkedIn and like jamming down their throats a bunch of like articles that nobody really wants to read anyway? So, I was like, I got to be real creative. But I do things that I do know, and I listen to you guys. I mean, I actually know you in real life, so it's a little bit different. But there's things about the podcast host that you just feel like you know them. I know a lot about a lot of different podcast hosts that I feel like I'm inviting you into my car. I'm inviting you into my house. And I'm listening to your story a lot, even though mine is about true crime. There's a lot of personality things that you know about me through the podcast. And so that was really how it was born. I love true crime. I actually initially started the idea of doing a building materials podcast. And I called my friend who does tile. She sells stone, quartz, and veneer, wall veneers and stuff like that. And she was like, "Okay, I could talk about tile all day long, but nobody wants to hear me talk about tile all day long. And unless you're like riveting about building materials or steel or whatever, nobody's gonna listen to that." And I'm like, "Okay." She said, "You have to niche down." And I'm like, I don't even know what that means. Like, and also you two know it's a labor of love. You got to talk about what you love. Otherwise it's going to be a job. And I didn't want it to be a job. So I thought, okay, I love true crime. I have a background in design. Let me Google architects that murder people. And so many stories came up, and I was like, I have content for like years. There's so many. Shocking. And so sometimes it's not, obviously Frank Lloyd Wright didn't murder anyone, but it was his boo that got murdered, right? His side piece. Or his mistress anyway. And then, Stanford White was murdered, right? So there's like it's crime adjacent. So it's not necessarily architects getting murdered or being murdered, But then there has been, I think what I love about it the most it sparked conversations about like violence, workplace violence. I have an episode on a young Black mom who was killed on a construction site in Fresno. Mm-hmm. And that sparked a conversation to start talking about like, programs like be that one guy. If you see something wrong at work, you say something, because things like this can happen. And, the architect that worked at one of the firms that I worked at previously was Little. And she was an architect in DC that was murdered by her boyfriend that she met online. And so I think that anytime, if somebody's listening to my podcast and they're like, oh, red flags, I'm seeing all these red flags. Maybe it's not my red flags, it's my sister's or my best friend's. Say something, because that can save a life. And so, as much as it's like kind of cringy, because, you know, my kids tell people, oh, she has a true crime podcast. And the parents are like, what? I think that if some of the stuff that I'm bringing up and the topics I'm bringing up have to be talked about, because I think it does affect the future of the profession. You know, specifically dating violence, workplace violence, and if we can continue those conversations, then hopefully I can save a life.
I hadn't thought about it that way, but you're kind of like really spot on, because I do think like even just in what you were describing in terms of stepping into the general contractor side of things and the building construction side of things, and then experiencing some different variables that, you know, felt uncomfortable. Not that that would go to that extreme, but just
Sure.
recognizing that there are things that happen. And I've definitely heard all kinds of crazy stories on either in architecture studios or
Mm-hmm.
on job
Mm-hmm.
sites. So I think, yeah, I guess thinking about it from a safety standpoint and just things can happen, I guess.
Things can happen, and it's specifically in the case of the young lady in Fresno. You know, when they interviewed her coworkers on the site, they said, "Oh, they fought like that all the time."
Mm-hmm.
So we never thought that anything was wrong. It was not like any other, you know, no different than any other day. They fought all the time. And he didn't like the fact that she was in the apprentice program, that she was, you know, moving up, that she was, you know, doing something good for herself, but also showing that, you know, women are very competent in this work as well. And he did not like that. And so he wound up taking a life, which is terrible. And so, you know, I'm hopeful that we can continue to have these conversations as it relates to architecture. But even beyond that, I think, you know, what is our responsibility as white collar workers? Because when we're in the office and we think, oh, well, that's happening out there, we do have a responsibility as well. And so I always think, like, what can I be doing that's different? And I, white collar worker working in a GC's office, and was called sexual chocolate. So,
Yeah.
you know,
I don't know. Some of the architects you feature, it sounds like there's some issues there too.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
whoa.
Oh, yeah. This
was not in my architectural history class.
No, I know. And that's what I love too, is that so many people have come to me and they're like, I did not know anything about the Frank Lloyd Wright stuff. And I mean, if you ever step one foot into an architecture 101 class, like, that was literally one of the first people that they talk about. And a lot of people are very surprised to hear that side of the story. And so I just want to continue to, like, create and bring good stories in our profession. And this community our AEC community as a whole has really rallied around my little podcast that could. And they've been so supportive. And so I've taken a little bit of a break to get the book completed. And then we'll obviously release new episodes of Death by Architecture in the fall. So
I'm
excited.
excited. I've definitely been listening, and I will continue to be a subscriber and listener.
Thank you.
Is there anything that you can share about what you've learned about yourself in working in the podcast? I'm sure there's other people out there that, like, listen and they're thinking about, man, it'd be cool to do a podcast one day.
Do it. I have met some of the coolest people doing the podcast. Like, I mean, I had no idea what I was doing. And I've, like, you know, I asked Evelyn, you know, and I think so, this is the sad part, is that we're so used to, like, this is mine, you know, this is my territory, and keeping showing everybody my playing cards. And, you know, from minute one in the conversation I had with Evelyn about it, she's like, the more the merrier, like, more voices amplified will do the best for, you know, women in this arena. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, oh, well, I mean, obviously not surprised that she would be supportive, because we've been great friends for a long time, but I even large podcasts, I've reached out and asked questions like, what do you do here? What should I do here? And people have dropped everything. Call me right now. And we could talk for like hours about best practices that they've seen. And so I think if anybody is considering it, I'd say do it, because it is a labor of love, but there's just like, you gotta just, once you press submit on that first episode and you can't I mean, I guess you could delete it. You could delete it, but, and once it's out there, you could tweak it along the way. I think people get so caught up in it has to be perfect. It has to sound right, like clear and crisp and all the, I have to have the really expensive mic. And actually a little tidbit about that, don't get the expensive stuff. I have a really expensive mic and it's sitting, I'm looking at it. I don't use it because I like how the $30 mic that I got off of Amazon sounds as opposed to the really expensive one. So you don't have to have expensive equipment and just don't have analysis paralysis. You just gotta jump right in. And if anybody has any questions, I'm willing to pay it forward, because I can't even tell you how many podcasters I've reached out to that full stop have stopped what they're doing to tell me, come on, let's go. Get in the bus. Let's go. We're going to do this thing together.
Yeah. And it's so much, well, as long as you're working on something you care a lot about, it's so much fun. And I think you get better over time. But yeah, this arena, especially AEC podcasting, we need more women. We need more people of color. We need more voices in this space. I get so excited every time I meet a new podcaster, because it's like a community of people that I guess we're like weirdos that we love doing this like weird thing that's extracurricular, but like it's so fun getting to meet other people who are like, yeah, I get excited that I'm recording this random thing that maybe nobody will care about, but it'll be great.
Only my mom will listen to it, but she will love it. She will give it 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
Exactly.
Yeah. I feel like we should do, like maybe next conference, do a live podcast with there were so many. On a whim, before I went to AIA conference in Chicago, put on my Instagram that I was going to be at the booth, obviously working for Microdesk, but I was like, nobody's gonna care, like whatever. I was like, if you're there, like stop by. And I wasn't at the booth all the time. Like I was out walking the floor or went to a couple of the sessions, and every time I would leave and come back, my bosses would be like, someone else stopped by to say hi, to meet you, and stay in the booth, because people are coming by to rally and around this community, this thing that you have. And I met so many of the other AEC podcasters while I was there. It's just a neat energy, and I think we could do something really cool. I think we should do something really cool next conference.
I totally agree. There were way more of us at convention than I thought there were.
Yep.
And I actively subscribe to a lot of these podcasts, and I was like, holy cow, we're like a force. This is pretty exciting.
I actually I don't know if you can cut this, you can delete this part if you don't want to bring it up, but I actually submitted for a session on podcasting and podcasting for your organization, but also podcasting for yourself personally. Obviously it wasn't picked up and they decided that they didn't want to talk about it, but I find that there's so much fascinating, people tell me all day long that that's what they want to do, that their company wants to do it, but they're not sure what to do. So I feel like there's such energy around it that I was surprised that they didn't want to talk about that. And knowing how many podcasters were actually even at the convention, it didn't have to be me. It could have been any number of you guys. And so it was frustrating, but nonetheless, I'm still going to commit.
Well, maybe we just do it on POA or something.
Yeah, that would be neat. I love that.
That would be neat. So to close out this conversation, I want to come back to, the main thesis of this episode was really around career pivots and like not knowing where it's going to lead you. So we'd love to know one piece of advice that you would like to leave with others who are out there listening and soul searching their way through their career. what can you leave with them?
I think remember that you aren't leaving. Architecture never leaves you. You will look at everything and anything you do in your life through the lens of being a designer, a PM, or an architect. And that skill can be taken anywhere. What was given to us in architecture school and the wealth of knowledge that we learned from our bosses and working in this industry will never leave us. And so it's super valuable, and it's valuable to, I think, clearly, because we're like what Evelyn talked about earlier, we're going into other arenas. It's a valued resource. And so you're not leaving architecture. I didn't leave. I'm still around. I'm still actively involved in the AIA. I'm still on the board. Jeff's never going to get rid of me. And so, so you don't think that you're walking away from something. And I think, another thing I like to say is get a mentor, somebody that you could go to and bounce ideas off of. And I do talk to my husband about career stuff all the time, or my mom, but they have vested interest in what I do next, because it's like, well, we're going to eat top ramen if she doesn't go to work. And so get somebody that can speak encouragement into your life and be your cheerleader. And you really have, Jeff's not a hard person to be in relationship with. He's a very easy easy guy to build rapport with. But if I hadn't stepped out on that, I could have easily told Cheryl, I don't want to do that. That makes me uncomfortable. I'm not going to call this man that I don't know. And so I'm glad that I did, because now 20 years later, I have that person in my corner who I know is always going to be in my corner. And then lastly, take the risk. With great risk comes great reward, and that you never know where life is going to take you. And like I said, architecture is not gone anywhere for me. So I might be back. Just kidding. You never know. Coming to a firm near you.
I think you're there already. You haven't left. You're influencing in many, many ways.
Yeah. So yay. Thanks so much for having me. I love chatting with you guys. We literally could go on and on about, our just talking as this is just friends just hanging out and having a good time. And that's what I love about this community, is that, I wanted it to be more of a conversation. We're just catching up.
Yeah, absolutely. And we adore you, Tenille. And likewise, could talk for another hour, but just for the sake of our listeners, we will say, please go check out in the show notes. Tenille's got some great links. She mentioned her upcoming book, which will be for children. What's the name again?
Maybe I'll be an architect.
Maybe I'll be an architect. Or you can go check out Death by Architecture, a really fantastic podcast, and just keep up with her. She's doing good stuff, and I'm sure she'd love to hear from you.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Hi, Disruptors. If you like the content from today's show, you can find all of our past episodes over on practiceofarchitecture.com/podcast.
Be a part of the conversation by joining us, our speakers, and others in our community at practiceofarchitecture.com/community. Our social media handle is @practiceofarch. That's @practiceofarch. We love to hear from you. Drop us a note to say hello.
This show is part of Gable Media. You can learn more about other podcasts and video channels in our community by visiting gablmedia.com.
Thank you for joining us on Practice Disrupted, a podcast by Practice of Architecture. Tune in next week for a new conversation on change in the profession.